So I'm now going to dive into the Meeting in a Box materials, and if anyone has any questions as I'm going, please feel free to use the question a link over on in the GoToWebinar box, or you can use the chat box as well to ask any questions. And I'll try to keep an eye on that as I go in case there are questions that come up that I should answer as I'm going. If not, I'll look at the questions at the end and answer those questions at the end. And I can also unmute phones, and people can ask questions directly at the end. So the idea about of meetings in a box is really to replicate and expand upon the work that was done during the second round of forums. So the content that we're asking people to provide to us via this second round of meetings in a box is really similar to that content. And that way we can kind of compare and pull that information together. But the meeting in a box is a way for people to participate outside of the forums, whether they didn't come because it's not convenient, or it didn't work out for them for one scheduling reason or another. If it's something that people aren't comfortable coming to a large public meeting and participating there, we want to provide another mechanism for people to provide similar input to what we did during the forum. So that's what the Meeting in a Box is really about. And the idea behind a Meeting in a Box is that these can be citizen-led, or they can be led by folks at the TPO or other agencies. They can be led in homes. Maybe it's a neighborhood association meeting. You can invite your neighbors and have them come over. They can also be held during meetings of other organizations that are already scheduled, regularly scheduled meetings, like a Kiwanis meeting, or as I mentioned, a neighborhood association meeting, or maybe a church gathering, where you have people already together. And it's a great opportunity to take these questions to people where they are already meeting and gather input, and make it really convenient for people to participate in this process. So the materials I'm going to go through now are geared toward if you were going to host a meeting really separately from, say, an existing organizational meeting. If you were going to host a meeting in a box yourself in your home, or in a community gathering space, and invite people to participate. So that's the way I'm going to go through this, is with that in mind, but keep in mind it can be adapted for use in other types of meetings. So the Meeting in a Box materials are available on the Plan ET website. I can show you where. On the homepage, if you go to the homepage and scroll down to Plan ET Spotlight, right down here, and the Meeting in a Box Forum Series 2 materials are there for download. If you'd like to download those, that's what I'm going through right now. So these materials are pretty comprehensive and pretty self-explanatory. That said, I'm going to run through them quickly, take about 10 minutes to go through them, just to be sure that everything is clear. So this is the Meeting in a Box packet. The first page that you have is really just general information about the Plan ET process. It's a regional partnership of communities building a shared direction for the future, and just some general information. And then down here you can see the Meeting in a Box contents. So there's a page that has a process overview. There are host instructions that give more detailed instructions for a host. There's some sample materials, like a sample invitation, if you wanted to mail out invitations to your friends and neighbors, or included in an agenda for an existing meeting. There's some sample invitation materials. There's a meeting agenda, questions for discussion, a project map, and sign-in sheet. Those are really the materials that you would use during the Meeting in a Box session itself. Participant and group worksheets, which is where we're really gathering the thoughts and information that are being gathered during the Meeting in a Box session. An individual feedback sheet, which is where we're asking people to provide us with some general demographic information so that we know who has participated in the Meeting in a Box, and that sheet is optional. Then some additional materials that can be sent home with Meeting in a Box attendees, like the project schedule and website information. Then some instructions for the host to return all of that information to us, and the host feedback form. So I will go through all of those, but that's all of the materials that are in this Meeting in a Box packet. So the meeting overview, this sheet is really designed, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so you can see the whole thing at once. This is really just to get hosts and attendees familiar with what the Meeting in a Box is all about. So what is the purpose of the Meeting in a Box? It's to encourage group conversation about the future residents want to see for the region. That's what the Forum 2 sessions were about, and that's what Meeting in a Box 2 is about. Prioritizing ideas for the regional vision, and then identifying how those future priorities will apply to individual communities. So the first step is really looking regionally, what's the vision for the future for the region, and then asking people to think about how that actually translates on the ground in their specific individual communities. And then there's a set of the materials that will be needed. So some of those materials are provided here in this packet. And then a few things like pens and pencils are things that hosts will need to provide themselves. So the meeting process summary, the idea is that hosts will identify 8 to 12 participants to invite to a meeting. The meetings can be larger. If you do want to host a larger meeting, we might encourage you to break your meeting participants up into slightly smaller groups. 12 is about the maximum that we would want having a discussion at once. Otherwise, it gets a little unwieldy. So identifying 8 to 12 participants, or identifying an existing meeting, like a neighborhood association meeting, where you can take these materials and lead an exercise during that meeting. And then sending a meeting invitation via email, mail, or calling invitees, or getting yourself on the agenda of an existing meeting. You want to remind people 1 to 2 days before the scheduled meeting via phone or email, just to be sure that everyone remembers that they have agreed to come. Set up. So that's selecting a location where all participants can comfortably sit, preferably in a circle. Then you want to go ahead as the host to sort copies of meeting materials and just get ready to actually host the meeting. So that's providing pens and pencils. If you have a camera and can photograph the camera, can photograph the meeting, or know someone who has a camera that can photograph the meeting, we love to get pictures of these so that we have a sense of what the meetings were like and we can share the full results with everyone. And then this is optional as well, but if you wanted to provide like refreshments, we always recommend that. People need a cup of coffee or some water while they're doing this. That's always great to have that available. And then step 4 is the actual facilitation of the meeting, and we'll go through some details of that in just a moment. That's leading the discussion, making sure that everyone has a chance to talk, and collecting the information on the worksheets that we're providing. And then return the material. So that's the individual response sheet, the demographic information, and the group sheets, making sure you get that back to us so that we can really collect all this information and understand what all you talked about during that meeting. So the second sheet in the meeting in a box materials is really more detailed information for the host. So the group logistics. What are these meetings designed to do? They're designed to encourage group conversation. So again, if you're having a larger meeting, we suggest that you break up into smaller groups and provide a note taker or recorder for each of those small groups, and preferably also a facilitator. It's great if you can have both a facilitator and a note taker for each group. We understand that sometimes people might need to play dual roles and actually facilitate and note take at the same time. But ideally, you would have a facilitator and note taker. And the facilitator's role is really to make sure that the conversation stays on time, however much time you have allocated, either in the meeting itself. We recommend at least an hour to do it if you are going to do it separately. And smaller, if you have a smaller amount of time, if you're doing this as part of as part of the agenda item of another meeting, you may have a lot less time. And so you just need to sort of think through how much time you're going to spend on each of these exercises. And the facilitator, your role is really to make sure that the conversation stays on time, as well as making sure that everyone in the group has a chance to speak and no one dominates the conversation, and that everyone stays respectful. And that brings us into number 2 on this host guide, which is the group discussion rules. And these are sort of the ground rules for conversations that we set during the forums. And they're also good ground rules for the meeting in a box. So as you can see, these are relatively straightforward. Everyone should have an equal opportunity to speak, focus on the questions that are at hand. This one in particular is important because people may have a tendency to get kind of sidetracked and want to talk in detail about certain things that are not really on topic. So we really ask you to focus on the questions that are in the agenda. Listen, avoid criticizing, be honest and try to understand other viewpoints. Try not to interrupt, avoid making things personal, and of course, turning off the ringer on cell phones. That's important even in these small group meetings, not only in the large forums. The materials, the meeting in a box is designed to be used with a variety of different groups. The instructions and worksheets are relatively flexible, so you could use them as they are, either in a small group discussion or if you're part of the agenda of a larger group meeting, these worksheets will still work. If you don't want to use the worksheets, that's fine. You may want to use a flip chart, or if you wanted to take notes on a laptop computer, that is fine. If you do that, please do provide it back to us with all the information that is included in the worksheets that we are providing. So use the same headings and the parts of the questions, just so we know how to match up the input with the questions that we're asking, and the labels for the groups so that we know who the materials are coming from. So now we can dive a little bit into actually the meat of the meeting itself. We ask you to first do a round of welcome and introductions. So take a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting just to explain why people are there. And that really should focus on, we're looking for getting input from a variety of different mechanisms. We welcome input from all stakeholders in the process. And that's why we're asking people to participate in these meetings in a box and to host meetings in a box. And then ask for a round of introductions around the room. So it'd be great to get names, affiliations, interest in Plan East Tennessee, but we do want to keep that relatively short. And again, at this point, you'd want to go ahead and review those ground rules and make sure that everyone agrees to them, answer any questions about them, add to that list of ground rules if you'd like to. So then we'll dive into exercise A, and this is probably where you'll want to spend most of your time. It will take a little bit more time. Exercise A will take some more time than exercise B, but both of them are really important. So we do ask that you try to do both if you can, if you have time. So exercise A, again, this mimics the Forum 2, excuse me, the Forum 2 exercises. Exercise A is really about what is your vision for the future of the region. So the question that we're asking is really around what you would like to see the region look like in 2040. And at this point, I'm actually going to jump down to the worksheet that people will be working off of, just so you have a sense of what that looks like. So this is the participant worksheet, and all of your participants should be given one of these at the beginning of the meeting in a box process. And this is exercise A. So the question that we're asking is, imagine the 5-county region in 2040. What will the region be like for you in the next generation? And then there's a list of prompting questions here that we'll ask you to go to have your group consider. So they do not have to actually answer each of these questions separately, but these are some questions just to get people's brains warmed up and thinking about this exercise. So what employment and education options will be available, for example? What transportation systems will be provided? How will medical services and our health be maintained? Question about neighborhoods and communities, the natural environment. And then why people will want to stay, move to, or visit the region. That's sort of what's attractive about the region and what keeps people here. And then there's another one that's just sort of a catch-all. What are some other issues? So these questions are really just to kind of get people warmed up and thinking about this. And you can move through them if you'd like, but you don't have to. We provide some space here for people to think about. This is what we ask you to do here with exercise A. Ask people to sort of think about these questions, take a few minutes to jot down some ideas on that worksheet. And then facilitators, we're asking you to go around the group and have everyone start to present their vision ideas. So you can either go through that list or topic by topic. You can do it any way you want. And not, again, you don't have to address every one of those questions, but it would be great to get information around each of those as possible. So just go around and write down ideas either on a flip chart in the laptop or just take notes for each of those. So note takers, you can use the following abbreviations there, and they're also on the participant worksheets. What we would like to do is sort the ideas as either as you are collecting them from people or after you have a long list of ideas, you can go back and actually sort them into different topics. And the reason that we're asking you to do this is because we want to identify the top ideas in each of these focus areas. So the focus areas are economy and workforce, and you see there's an abbreviation there, EC/W, transportation and infrastructure, housing, healthy communities, and environment. So once you go through and get the vision ideas from all of the people in the group, you can either do it as you go or afterward, go ahead and code them using those abbreviations. So for example, someone may say in 2040, my vision is that the region will be known for its beauty, clean air and water, ease of getting around, and quality job opportunities. Obviously, that vision statement has several different focus areas included in it, so it has been tagged with several different abbreviations. That is really helpful for us in just making sure that we separate those things out by topic as we go. So part 1 and 2 is really just to get folks thinking, gather those vision elements, and then part 2 of that is to tag those with the abbreviations. Part 3 of exercise A is focusing on prioritizing your group's responses. So as I mentioned, we're interested in getting the top ideas within each of those focus areas. So whoever has done note-taking can either read back or sort of guide people through the flip charts and the notes that are there, and read through all of them and ask the group to vote on each item and tally the votes to determine the priority items within each of those categories. So we want you to do that for each focus area on the group response sheet. And then the note taker is going to capture the top 2 highest priority answers on the group response sheet. And here I'll skip down to that group response sheet and show you what I'm talking about there as well. So this is the participant worksheet, and then the group priority sheet is where we'll be capturing those top ideas. So you can see here for each of those focus areas, economy and workforce, transportation and infrastructure, housing and neighborhoods, there's a space for the group's main priorities. So the idea is to get a sense of what the group wants as the top 2 for each of those. So that voting process where you go through the ideas that have been generated as a group and have people vote on which ones they think are the top priority. That's the outcome of that will be 2 top ideas for each of those focus areas. So I'm going to stop for just a second and see if there are any questions on that exercise, exercise A. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can unmute everybody's phone for just a second. So Cheryl and Sharif, I've just unmuted you all. I don't know if you have any questions, but please let me know now if you do. Any questions on exercise A? Or Rob, is there anything that I need to clarify?
No, I thought you went through it very thoroughly.
Okay, good. All right.